Hi, my name is Ash Moria, and in this video, I'm going to show you how to double your fundable startup throughput in less than 12 months while increasing the valuation of your startups. Now that's quite a mouthful, so let's break down this value proposition. First, let me define what I mean by fundable startup throughput. The fundable startup throughput is the number of investment-ready startups that you create through your incubator or accelerator program. The reason we decided to focus on this particular metric is that for accelerators, this is ultimately the one metric that matters. The more fundable startups you produce, the better your brand awareness in the short term, and the better your business model works in the long term. So how many fundable startups do you need to create per year? Most accelerators today run 2 to 3 cohorts a year with an average of 10 teams. That means they create about 25 startups per year. If, however, we take a look at the startup funnel math shown here and work our way backwards, you'll see that to create one startup with a sizable exit, you need to be creating at least 50 to 60 fundable startups a year during the incubation and acceleration phases. That's twice the number of startups that most accelerators currently create. The assumptions on this chart are all taken from real-world numbers reported by top accelerators and startups. Feel free to pause the video here and review these numbers. Now, these numbers are precisely why some of the top performing accelerators like Y Combinator and Techstars, who currently create more than 250 startups a year, are still constantly working hard to increase their fundable startup throughput numbers even higher. The second part of our value proposition is equally important. We don't just increase your number of investable startups at the expense of quality, we actually help you raise the valuation of your startups by showing you how to create more startups with real, meaningful traction. As you can see from this slide from Jason Calacanis, valuation directly correlates with traction. One of the things missing though on this slide is a timeline, which is where the third part of our value proposition comes in. We show you how to take startups from idea to meaningful traction in 12 months or less. We do this with a set of curated stage-based playbooks shown here. These playbooks help you systematically coach your startups to find and grow traction in their business models. I'll dive into more details in the video, but before doing that, let me show you a real-world case study from one of our customers, Propel. Now, Propel is a regional accelerator that operates in the Atlantic Canada region. Before using LEANSTACK, they were running 4 cohorts a year in 4 different cities and generating about 40 startups a year. After LEANSTACK, they were able to double that number to 80 startups a year. Now, while 40 startups a year is a decent rate, Propel wasn't happy with the quality of startups they were creating. They constantly struggled with measuring the progress of their startups, especially those that were pre-revenue. And they had little consistency in how their programs were run across the different cohorts. In late 2017, they hired a new CEO, Barry Bisson, who immediately started exploring ways to revamp their program. Their 2 goals were improving startup throughput across the region while improving the quality of their startups. 2 of their EIRs attended our 3-day mentor training workshop in Austin in April of 2018, which was the trigger for them to switch to our platform. They have been with us for just over a year now and have doubled their startup throughput. They also have a plan in place for increasing this throughput even further. A key component of how they achieve this is using the playbooks I showed earlier, so let me quickly cover where they came from. These playbooks were developed and refined by me over the last 9 years through thousands of hours of workshops and boot camps with startup teams. If you don't know much about my background, allow me to spend just a minute to give you a quick overview. My name is Ash Moria, and I'm the founder of LEANSTACK. I'm also the author of 2 best-selling books, Running Lean and Scaling Lean, and the creator of the one-page business modeling tool, Lean Canvas. I was one of the early contributors to the Lean Startup movement back in 2009, which is what eventually led up to these playbooks. Even in the early days of the Lean Startup, I saw that while these principles were easy to understand, they were quite hard to put into practice. What drove me even back then was finding a step-by-step practicable meta framework for entrepreneurs, one that raised their odds of success. While our playbooks are heavily rooted in the Lean Startup methodology, they combine best practices from several other frameworks, such as jobs to be done, design thinking, and business model design, that are better suited at filling some of the gaps missing in Lean Startup. Lean Startup is great at applying the scientific method for testing an idea but it doesn't, for instance, teach startups how to generate good ideas in the first place, or how to model their ideas into repeatable and scalable business models. Now, if you're familiar with my first book, Running Lean, these playbooks are very much written in that same style, with a set entry and exit point and a clear meta roadmap focused on doing just the right things at the right time. So the playbooks are the first part of the solution. Using these playbooks to drive better outcomes from your startup funnel is the second part. So let's talk about that next. The first step to creating more fundable startups is growing your early stage startup pipeline at the very top of your funnel. As the number of accelerators has exploded and costs of building products have gone down, finding the best startups has become a numbers game. And it's critical to do this as early in the process as possible. Even top accelerators like Y Combinator invest heavily in top of the funnel initiatives like Startup School in order to reach prospective founders and brand their offering to them right at the early stages. We help you build your version of Startup School using our first two playbooks, Ideations and Foundations, as flagship content to build your top of the funnel. Prospective startups sign up using branded pages and learn foundational mindsets for building and launching their ideas using our continuous innovation framework. We also give you the necessary marketing tools to measure your funnel, drive engagement using integrations, using tools like HubSpot, MailChimp, Typeform, and Stripe. Our Foundations playbook not only drive engagement, but also help with the second step, increasing application quality. Now, many accelerators drown in applications during their intake process. If you require your startups to submit a 5-minute video with their application, even if you get just 100 of these applications, reviewing all these videos which aren't consistent from one to the other alone equates to 500 hours or 62 working days. In order to fill 50 spots, as we saw earlier, you'll probably need 10 times as many applications, which is about 500 to 1,000 applications, which quickly becomes unmanageable. The worst part is that most of these video pitches are quite bad because startups don't yet know how to pitch. They focus too much on their solution and not enough on customers or problems. They don't talk enough about business model or understand their traction metrics. The best time to teach startups how to pitch is not during an active cohort or during the application process, but before they even apply. This is where our evergreen Foundations and Ideation playbook help. They not only teach startups the fundamentals of continuous innovation, but they also teach them how to pitch their ideas more effectively as a business model using tools like the Lean Canvas and a traction roadmap. This gives you a consistent way to score your applications and baseline your startups to determine what stage they're in and which playbook to use next. Now, as startups enter your program, it becomes increasingly important to consistently measure progress, which is where the next step comes in. A core part of our thesis is that the startup game is won at the early stages. And the early stage is all about picking the right teams versus ideas. Now, it has statistically been shown that more than 2/3 of all successful ideas go through at least one drastic pivot. What separates successful startups then isn't starting with that perfect idea, but rather their ability to iterate quickly from their first idea to an idea that works. Good teams are those that demonstrate good thinking processes and rigorously test their assumptions. We help you both teach and track this with our platform. As teams use our playbooks, we track metrics around skills, activities, and traction on our platform. From these inputs, we are able to build a data model that helps you identify good teams from bad, which helps you make smarter investor decisions. The next pillar in the funnel is scaling mentorship. The most impactful way for building high-performing teams is through personalized one-on-one coaching and mentorship. This also is the least scalable activity. When it comes to mentoring early-stage teams, we have a very different approach and philosophy to what is commonly practiced. A lot of accelerators rely on volunteer-driven mentorship from seasoned entrepreneurs in the community. We have seen this do more harm than good, especially at the early stages because of the advisor whiplash problem. When a startup asks 10 different advisors for advice, they often will get 10 different prescriptive answers. Who do they listen to? The advisor that made the most sense or the one that had the biggest exit? Now, just to be clear, there is a place for seasoned entrepreneurs and domain experts, but we don't believe it's at the early stages when the business model is still highly undeveloped and very uncertain. Overloading startups at that stage with many conflicting prescriptive solutions is a recipe for distraction and losing focus. Our approach to this mentorship problem is relying on trained coaches versus volunteer advisors. A coach focuses on asking the right questions versus providing the right answer. A Socratic approach like this one at the early stages, guided by a playbook, goes a long way in teaching startups how to think and act objectively. The best part is that this approach of asking the right questions versus giving the right answer not only can be taught, but is also more readily scalable and drives better results. We provide both onboarding training and ongoing training where we share best practices for deploying our playbooks along with tactical techniques for coaching teams, business model validation patterns, and more. Our online platform standardizes our coaching process around 3 basic models: a lean canvas for the business model story, a customer factory blueprint for metrics, and a customer forces canvas for modeling customer behavior. We then use a lean sprint process which can be tracked on a sprint board. The sprint board helps coaches keep startups accountable in 2-week sprints. Since a lot of this data is all captured online, each sprint session only takes 30 minutes to run and is a high leverage activity that the coaches can use to unblock teams and focus them on the right next actions. The last pillar in the solution is building a discipline for constantly measuring, refining, and improving your own startup funnel. Cohort analysis, which is measuring batches of startups against each other, is the gold standard for doing this. Our platform helps you normalize performance of teams, whether you run them through set batches or as a rolling cohort. We can measure these different batches and then measure performance across the cohorts, teams, and individual founders so that you have all the data you need to continuously optimize your programs. So that was a high-level overview of how to deploy our playbooks using a self-guided roadmap for founders, a coaching process for mentors, and a platform to measure your startup funnel. Now, when people hear about our playbooks, they think it's just another curriculum and it's something that they can build on their own. The first thing I'll say there is that building a curriculum, especially one that gets used and drives results, is a lot tougher than it sounds. It's taken 9 years for us to build these playbooks along with the tools to track them. And we still constantly test and refine them even further based on the metrics that we collect around them. Sure, you can bombard your startups with yet more content. That's what most accelerators do, but that's not what gets results. It's not about more content, but the right content at the right time and more experiential learning by way of working on startup problems. Next, 12 weeks or 16 weeks, which is the average length of most accelerator programs, is simply not enough time for education and acceleration. You have to pick one. If you focus on the wrong content, you end up overloading your startups with needless knowledge that they don't ever get to put to practice. Our playbooks instead focus on the fundamentals, on what it takes to quickly validate a business model and build traction. A key point of difference that quickly comes out in our playbooks is that our playbooks are built by entrepreneurs for entrepreneurs. We are all practicing entrepreneurs and have built dozens of products over the years and continue to use our own playbooks to build even more products in our company, LEANSTACK. So that was a quick overview of how we work with accelerators to help grow their fundable startup throughput. Now, if you see a fit here and want to work with us, go ahead and book a call below this video. On the call, we'll start by first understanding your model, answering your questions. We can give you a demo, and if there's still a fit, we'll come up with a plan for how to implement these playbooks. I look forward to seeing you on the call. Take care.